Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless and Free TV. Today, I'm having a conversation with Charlie Ward. Charlie is one of the leading voices in the global freedom movement, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, primarily because Charlie and I had very similar upbringings. So I'm going to be talking about how he grew up, doing a little contrasting and comparing his childhood to my childhood, how we both ended up leaving our religious cults that we grew up in. We actually grew up in cults at the same time on opposite ends of the world. And I'm going to be talking to him about his new book, which I have just finished reading, which is Just Charlie, and talking about where he came from, what he's been up to, where he's been, and where he's going, and how he came to be who he has come to be as one of the leading voices, one of the leaders in the new financial prosperity system that is happening on the planet right now and soon to be. And so I am looking forward to this conversation and sharing Charlie with all of you.
Hi, Victoria. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Charlie?
Yeah, I couldn't be better at the moment. It's so super exciting. It really is. There's so much going on, isn't there?
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. And behind the scenes, things that I know we can't actually talk about, but I tune in and Spirit's telling me there's some really good stuff happening on the planet now.
Well, I did,
and moving forward.
I did an interview. What's it now? It's now 10 o'clock. And I did an interview at 6 o'clock. So 4 hours ago, I did an interview with two young ladies from America. One had been trafficked, and one was involved in a child agency that was trafficking children, and she left them. One half of me is sad that she left because she could have been a source of vital information. She still is. She still knows far more than she's allowed to say because she's under an NDA and she's under protection. But the young lady that was trafficked, that was an interesting story for me this morning, because right from the start, she said, look, Charlie, I got into the sex business at 17 because I wanted to make money and I wanted the fame and the fortune. And I thought that was a very interesting way to start the conversation, because what it did was it laid it wide open. So you can't say, oh, I was forced into it, didn't want to do it and all this. She was open. And we all, at 17, you and I both know we made mistakes when we were younger.
Yeah.
I often joke that I knew more when I was 17 than I know now.
Oh, well, you know what? I agree. It's the older I get, the more I know I don't know, which is fascinating.
Isn't
it?
So
I read your book.
Oh, yes.
I did. And I found it really interesting. So what I ended up doing, because you and I had such a similar childhood, I did kind of a contrast and compare. And in some ways, our childhood was very similar. So you and I grew up at the same time on opposite ends of the world.
Yep.
In these fundamentalist religion cults.
Yep.
And in some ways, they were very similar. They were both what I call doomsday cults. So there was always this end of the world, like hovering over our entire existence.
Yep.
And we, the other thing I always thought was interesting, but of course this is a cult thing, is that we were the chosen ones.
Yeah.
Because it's always the chosen ones. And there's only ever going to be 144,000 people that will survive the end of the world. I don't know if you had that, but right. We're the only ones that are going to survive. We also didn't celebrate holidays.
No.
Yeah. The only holidays, now we did, we celebrated birthdays, but none of the other holidays. And we celebrated Jesus' birthday, which in my religion was April 6th. So we had like a birthday cake and everything for Jesus on April 6th every year.
Okay.
but that was it. And the same thing with school. School wasn't important for us either, especially girls. I mean, the girls weren't allowed to go past 8th grade because it was kind of pointless. We were just going to get married and have babies. So what was the point of having an education? And yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have some of that too?
Yeah, it was like, well, they've now in the Plymouth Brethren, they now have their own churches. So I don't know what they teach in there, but we went through the normal schooling system, but we were so protected. I often look back and think it's funny that because I wasn't allowed to go into religion, the only other lesson I could go into was cooking. So I learned to cook at school. But those sort of things you look back and smile at. Now, at the time, I was like, I don't even like cooking. I don't like religion. I don't like cooking. I wasn't because I was brainwashed or indoctrinated, as they like to call it, into believing that school was unnecessary. Looking back, they're probably right. It probably was unnecessary because the stuff we were taught really, the things that I look back and wish I'd learned more about. I wish I'd learned more of truthfulness about history, where we come from and what have you. I wish I'd understood more about geography. That drastically lacks in America because the amount of Americans that I've spoken to have never left America. I think there's only 20% of Americans have passports, 80% don't. I always tease them, that's because you can't fit in a photo booth. 80% are too fat. But that's just being naughty. But there's a lot of people, they talk about going from one state to another. Some people have never left the state they were born in. I know people in North Dakota that have never left North Dakota.
Yeah.
And there are many, many places in the deep South where they've never left their state.
I've actually heard that a lot of Americans never travel within 15 miles of their hometown, which I find fascinating because the world is dependent on American tourism, but so few Americans actually go anywhere.
Yeah. But you've got 300 million, 330 million or something people. So even if you take a small percentage, there's still a lot of people that are traveling. It's always fascinating. Like I love talking to Americans that do travel because they start to get it, and then they start to question what they've been told. Especially Americans when you see them in Africa, in Russia, in China, in India, even in Europe to a degree. But Europe is like little America to them.
Mm. Yeah, and I know you've done a lot of traveling. When I was reading your book, I was like, oh, Charlie's just been all over the place. You've lived a lot of different places and experienced a lot of different cultures.
The only place that I haven't been to that I really want to go to is Japan. I'm fascinating by the culture. They're so polite to each other. They seem to be really good people. And I've never been there, but I have a very good friend in England who's half Japanese, half English, and her family live there. And I'd love to go out with them so I can experience a family tour, if you like, of Tokyo and surrounding areers. Because if you go with locals, the minute I go to any country, I try and link up with locals, no matter where it is. So they show me. I've never been on like an organized tour. That's not really my style. I like to just grab somebody and say, right, show me your country. Show me the bits that nobody sees. They're the bits that I love. Yeah,
me too. Whenever we travel, now I haven't been, unfortunately, I haven't really been to Europe. I've been to Berlin. That's the extent of my European tour.
Yeah.
But I've been to all kinds of islands. That's just what we do. We go island hopping every summer.
Yeah. Now, there's some beautiful places in Europe, but I've always taken the decision that I will go further afield while I'm young enough to travel right around the world physically, because just like traveling to Australia is a 24-hour trip. So, it's quite demanding on your body. I do the further afield, and then when I get to an age that I feel that traveling, then I can enjoy Europe. But I've done most of Europe. There's not many countries in Europe that I haven't visited at some stage, but there's an awful lot more. There's so much. Like, I live in southern Spain, and I went up to northern Spain for a wedding. It's like being in a completely different country.
Wow.
We went up to a place called Logroño, which for people who know is the capital of Rioja wine. So it's the home of Rioja wine. You've got Haro next door, spelled Haro, Haro, which is where the vineyards are. but Logroño is where is the capital, and each bar serves its own wine. You know, it's very much, there's one street with, and everybody who's been there always remembers one particular bar. And the one particular bar they all remember is the mushroom bar, Champignon mushroom bar. Because the guy charges €1 for a mushroom, but he cooks it beautifully with like little prawns in, whatever. It's just €1 for just a little snack to go with his wine. But everyone remembers this Champignon, this mushroom bar, which is just incredible. And he sits with his back to you. So he's just cooking them and then passes them around to the bloke who's serving them. He's just sitting there cooking them carefully, but it's done with love and passion and everything else. But that was an experience. And that's very, very different to down here on the south coast, where we're literally a few miles away from Africa, down here on the coast.
Well, I will make it to Europe now that my kids are older and I can travel and not have to worry about dragging them around with me.
Well, you're always
not older. I mean, they do both still live. You know, they're still dependent on mom and dad.
Yeah, I always thought that when the kids left, they'd left, but they every now and then they pop back, don't they?
Yeah. Well, mine are still teenagers, so they're still. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's fascinating to watch. Justin, we were with yesterday. He managed to achieve gold medal in the county championships at gymnastics yesterday. So he's super proud, and we're super proud of him yesterday. So, but he's only 11 at the moment. He's 12 at the end of this year. So we're getting close to the teenage years with him.
Well, my kids were pretty good until this past year. 2020 made them both more grumpy than usual.
Yeah. It's interesting how these different things. I was explaining to Justin, because he's also learning that about the new quantum educational system. So his belief is that, like you and I grew up, well, I don't really need to be at school at the moment because they're teaching us a load of rubbish anyway. I go, no, that's actually important that you understand the rubbish so that when the truth comes along, it has a value. He's like, yeah, but I know already. I went, no. But no, it'd be interesting to read your book as well when you publish it, so that we can compare our journey.
Yeah. It's so my book is, I think it's going to end up being 3 of them, because this first book, well, I've written 4 books already, but this particular book is just about growing up in the cults. But I have a feeling that there's going to end up being 2 other ones after that's going to end up being a series. So this one is just about growing up in the cult and what it was like as a girl in that environment. So one of the things that was very different about my cult and your cult is I grew up in a polygamist cult. Yeah. So, but I kind of had to laugh. You made one comment in there about how your dad worked all the time, and then he possibly had some girlfriends. And I laughed because my dad worked all the time too, and he just married the other women.
Yeah.
And I think he actually didn't get a second wife until I was in high school. But the other thing that was interesting is both of our moms, I think, really wanted out. Yeah. And my mom just stuffed it. She stuffed all of her emotions, and we didn't drink. It was where in your cult, I find it interesting how kids were encouraged to start drinking at 12. Yeah. And in my cult that alcohol wasn't allowed at all. So my mom just had to stuff her emotions. There was no way of escaping. Yeah.
It was a very interesting. I phoned my father up the other day, just because I hardly ever speak to him, but I just phoned him up because I thought I needed to take the temperature, if you like, of where he was at. And I just said, I want to see how close you are to God. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, have you had the vaccine? And he said, yeah, I've had both of them. I went, thank you for that. I appreciate that. He said, why did you ask? I said, because the vaccine wasn't from God. That was from Satan. And he's gone, how do you know that? He said, yeah, I think you're wrong on that. I said, well, you don't need to ask me because I'm not the Messiah. I said, you need to ask God. And I thought you were close to him. I said, maybe I suggest you have a little word with him, because I said, I wouldn't be doing that if I was you. Well, I don't agree with you. I said, well, you won't do. But I said, you don't need to disagree with me. You just need to ask God if you've done the right thing. I said, I don't believe you have. Well, I think we'll end the conversation there, don't you? And I was like, yeah, by all means. He said, right, just as a parting note, I feel super healthy right now. I went, good, excellent. I'm very pleased to hear that. But it's amazing how he got on the attack about it. And well, hopefully I've planted a seed for him to, but you know, the fact that they've taken it suggests that the leaders in the church have encouraged it.
Right. Because at least from my experience, people in the church don't do anything without the people at the top telling them what to do.
Exactly. Well, if you've just nailed it there, because the reason that the people in the church that I was in was at the time when I was younger, James Taylor Jr. and Jim Symington was the next two leaders. They were both alcoholics. And they were the leaders. The other thing that was interesting this morning was when I was talking to this young lady about being trafficked, she went to the church to try and get help. And literally the next person she was trafficked to was the leader of that church.
Doesn't surprise me.
No. So one minute he's out there telling you how evil all of this is, and behind the scenes, that's exactly what he's playing at, which is how Satan and how the devil works, which is very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I say to people, deception is really good at what it does.
Yeah. I think it was my grandfather used to say that Satan will lead you into trouble, and then when you're in trouble, he'll just laugh at you. That always stuck with me as a child, because he'll attract you into something, and he won't help you out when you're in there, and he won't make it any nicer. He'll just laugh at you for getting into trouble. Right. It's a very, very sick mentality, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's really kind of where we are right now, just with what I refer to as the darkness on the planet that sucks people in and then just kind of laughs when we take the medicine they give us, the information that's dealt to us, and we just go, oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very interesting that I do an awful lot of study, and I was studying the secret cults and the secret societies, and it's very interesting. In one of the videos that I was watching, there was members of Parliament and members of Congress that were being asked questions about certain secret societies to see their reaction to the name, and the look of shock on their faces. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about. And it's just like, really? Okay. But you could see that they'd been caught, and they were like, oh shit, you're not supposed to know about that stuff. And this will be very interesting as gradually, thanks to people like Lynn Wood, who I think the world of. I mean, he's just like a naughty little boy that's become a lawyer, isn't he? I love him. I'm going to smack you with your own stick sort of mentality. I love it. I think he's absolutely brilliant. You've given me all the ammunition. I'm going to throw it at you. Who's that trying to call me? I don't know. Oh, I'll have to call him back. That's one of the owners of one of the mega files.
Oh.
Yeah. That I'm actually having to deal with at the moment, because one of the top team in the quantum system, her father died at the weekend. So they've said to me, can you just help out at the moment? I said, by all means. So there's certain things that have to be done. So I'm just dealing with him, but I'll speak to him later. But he's a good man.
Well, it's good that you're taking care of that.
Well, this is the important part of being a team, and you'll know this from growing up, that Every single member is valuable when you're trying to build a team. And some people go, well, I'm not really that much value. But on yours and my journey, some people that think they're insignificant on our journey are incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out. And in my particular case, I was one of 16 children.
Yeah.
So it was really a fend for yourself scenario. But I've learned teamwork over the years, and looking back, recognizing the people who helped me through my process. So I don't know about you. Did you find religious trauma syndrome? Do you think you were affected by that?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
And what it was fear, where it's interesting you named it that, because religious trauma syndrome, I didn't know that name, but I relate to it in the point that for 10 years after I left, anything that went wrong in my life, it felt like, because of my indoctrination and brainwashing, the reason for it was because I'd left the fold.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd left them, this is why everything had gone
So God
wrong.
was punishing you.
God was punishing me.
Right.
And that's what I was told. I was told very, very clearly that if I left, things would not work out for me. And I was also told that I could not survive without them. That was probably the best thing they told me, because that made me stand up and be counted. And yes, I was in the wilderness for many, many years. I didn't know where I was. And I refer to it now as the fourth dimension, where you come out of a world which you thought was true, which was not.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know. I didn't have anybody around me to tell me what was right. I had to find it for myself. And I made many mistakes, and took people, I landed up, as I've said in my book, I landed up in prison. I'm first person not to go to prison for not paying maintenance to my ex-wife. I just didn't have a moral compass. I was out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
And I had nobody. Very soon after that, I realized that going through the judicial system for that sort of thing, if I'd just met somebody like you at your age now, a woman who has been through certain things, it needed a motherly person just to say, look, grow up, Charlie. You're 20 years old, you're 23 years old, you've got 3 children. You're way too young for this, but you're in a place where, you've got yourself into, but we can't do anything about the past. What we can do is about the future. And if I'd looked back then and had somebody, a mother around me that could have just guided me and helped me with my moral compass, life would have been a lot easier. But having said that, through it not being easy, that's why I'm here where I am today. Right.
Yeah, I think that we were both in now we started out differently, where I think we both ran away at 17, I think. Were you 17 years old when you ran away? Yeah. So you went back home.
Yeah.
I left at 17 and I didn't go back home.
I went home because I ran out of money.
I didn't have any. I fortunately I had a family that agreed to take me in, so I had a place to stay.
Okay.
And they had rescued another girl from the cult as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a place to stay, but I didn't have any money. I'd never had a job. I don't even think I had a social security card. I had no idea, like you. And then I ended up getting a job and getting an apartment with my friend. But like you, I didn't have anybody to help me navigate. So we had to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. When I literally hitchhiked and got a lift with a lorry. So my only home was in the back of his lorry there, really, for the journey into France and down to Spain, then back again to Zaragoza, as I thought it was named then. And I just stayed with the lorry driver, and then he very kindly took me back because they'd take me down, and I told him what had happened. So he felt a bit guilty and took me back. Mm-hmm. And then he just dropped me off at a service station, and I phoned up my mum, said, I'm here. And of course, then when, number one, they're relieved that you're found alive, parents are, naturally, when you haven't been in contact for a few days. And it was only a few days. And then of course they tell you about the prodigal son, and we're so happy to have the prodigal son back home again. And I was thinking to myself, how can I get out of this? Because I'm trying to. Everyone was congratulating me on coming back to the. I was like, yeah, I just want out. And I couldn't get. So when the opportunity came along to get married, that was my out, if you like. I could then be in control. So yeah, it was, yeah. What a life, eh?
Yeah. Well, it's an adventure for sure.
Isn't it just? And of course, you and I aren't the only ones out there that have been through this. I know of hundreds and hundreds that have left the Plymouth Brethren. And I know ones that have left and got into the sex worker trade. I know that. Because it's just an escape. They just want to get out. And yeah, I got into trouble, but I haven't got the face to be a sex worker or the body. So that wasn't really the path for me. So yeah,
I do too. I know a lot of girls that ended up in the sex trade because they didn't have anything else. They had no education, no skills, nothing else, and that's where they ended up. I almost did. I barely managed to escape that in Hollywood. I kind of got wrapped up with some people in Hollywood.
Yeah.
That
easy.
And the only reason I told them I had a venereal disease. It's the only reason I got out of it.
Wow.
But they wanted to start passing me around.
Yeah. Well, you're still fit now, so back then you must have been super fit.
I was.
So yeah, and this is this is what they do. They're very clever how they sort of guide us down these certain pathways and what have you. I've watched it happening and I've seen it happen. And through this journey, I've spoken to so many people that I look back now with gratitude for the lessons that I've learned the hard way, that have stood me in good stead for now. At the time, it was not nice. A lot of what I've been through in my life has not been nice, but it's, the first time I went to prison, I remember crying the first day non-stop, and I was 24 years old and I cried like a baby inside, like, what the hell, I'm all locked up and I just hadn't paid maintenance. And then the next, that particular night when I was crying, I was banged up with a guy called Malky Mullen, who was a Scottish lad who was in for stealing cars. And every time he came out, he went and stole another car so he could get back in, because it gave him free food and a roof over his head. But he said to me at the time, the best piece of advice ever given to me in prison was, don't let them know your name. Remain a number. Keep your head down. Don't cause trouble. He said, they're not judgmental. They're custodial. They're paid to keep you inside. No point moaning to them. If you want to moan, talk to your lawyer, talk to a judge. Don't talk to them. Just keep your head down, keep quiet, and just say, okay, they're commissioned to keep you locked up. That's all they do. And so talking to them doesn't gain anything. That was a very good lesson to me, just to keep my head down. And as they call it, do your bird, do your time. Yeah, that was an education.
So your first time was for not paying child support, right?
Not paying child support, and I knew nothing about the case. It was done behind my back. And then when I came back in, when they arrested me, and then I went through the court system, I was a bit naughty as well, because the guy that was the chief prosecutor was called Mr. Mimac. Because I was a child, I kept referring to him as Mr. Micmac, because I just didn't like him. He was a horrible man. So that wound him up and didn't do me any good. Didn't do me any favors. I wasn't looking for favors because I was lost. I was directionless. I was rudderless. I didn't know where I was. So I was all over the place as coming from being a child to being a man, and out of one world into another. And of course, going in prison for the period of time that I did, which was only 3 months, you realize what people talk about the University of Crime, because I got in with a crowd that taught me how to print credit cards and £20 notes. And of course, I was all fascinated by this. And of course, when I came out, I linked up with their mates and was landed up doing exactly that. And of course, within another 6 or 8 months, I was back inside for printing credit cards and £20 notes. And It was only after that time that I decided myself that that's not the life I wanted. And that I had, the certain circle of friends that I'd mixed with were not the sort of people. And then for the next 10 years, I became incredibly lonely because I didn't trust anybody anymore. And the first person I trusted, we didn't get close for five to 10 years. Stevie G is my best mate. We're still best friends. I love him to death. He's an atheist and I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. And but spiritually we're on exactly the same frequency, but nothing to do with religion. And he was just there for me without being knowingly there. He was just like a rock to me, just somebody I could talk to. And we never ever argued about religion and God. We never argued. He didn't believe in it and I did. We talked about it, we debated it, but we never argued. He gave me his view, I gave him my view, and we just had a discussion. And we could communicate, and I thought the world of him, and vice versa. We've been very close friends for a long time. But it's fascinating.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be amazing if people could figure out that we can have those kinds of conversations?
Yeah, it would be. And I always give the example of the Mediterranean. I can have my view from above and a diver from below, and it's the same body of water, but a completely different perspective. Mm-hmm. And both perspectives are 100% right, but completely different. And this is where we've lost our way, that we're not prepared. I'm in a situation right now with my own family where they see things differently. And because they see things differently, they won't talk to me.
Right.
And I just have to deal with that. And I'll deal with it. It's not something that bothers me. And when you're in this position where you know the truth and you're willing to talk to them and they're not willing to talk to you, go fine. Then we'll leave it until the time that is right, rather than forcing it. I've had to learn to step back and just go, fine, we'll wait until the right time.
Right. And at some point, enough of the information is going to start coming out. Mm-hmm. They'll come around.
Yeah, I know why. I know exactly why we're in this position. And it's other influences around. It's been very, very interesting how those influences now, when you step back, how much impact they've had on them. It's very, very interesting.
Right. And well, that's how good the controlled narrative is. Yeah. And the psychology behind it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And that's why it's so difficult. I was talking to someone today about, even when all of this information comes out, there will still be people who won't believe it.
Yeah.
Because that's how strong cognitive dissonance is. They won't be able to accept it even when all of the evidence is in front of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of people like that. They will be in complete denial. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is that for those who understand the truth, and you and I are classic examples of that, we're just incredibly peaceful about it. It gives you a peace inside that is a real joy. And the other people, you can see it in them. They're really, really angry inside. They're frustrated. They're mad.
Well, a lot of people are afraid.
Yeah. And the fear manifests itself in anger. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And frustration.
Well, and the intentional division that's being caused doesn't help. It's fueling that anger.
Yeah.
So
it's very interesting at the moment how many. I know a lot more than I can say, but there's a lot of things that are being put out there right now to try and wake people up. None more so than the vaccination passport. That was purely a red flag put out to wake people up. But the amount of people have rushed to get it so they can go on holiday, so they can get away. It's the minute I get, and of course they've had the vaccination. Number one, they're still not allowed to travel.
Right.
Number two, I've heard certain people talking behind the scenes of airlines saying it may well go exactly the opposite way. Whereas if you've had the vaccine, you will not be allowed to travel.
Oh, because if so many people are having other people are having reactions to it.
You imagine, right? We already know that the vaccinations create blood clots.
Mm-hmm.
You take a blood clot up into the sky, and it will kill you.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the airlines do not want that liability.
They don't want dead bodies in mid-flight.
Mm-mm. No, that's interesting.
They don't have outside toilets to flush them out either. So there's no way it's going to be difficult. There's going to be, and this is very much like Satan leading you into trouble, then laughing at you. So these people have been led in to have the vaccination because they want to go away. And oh dear, you're the only ones that can't.
Mm. Well, and it's not even that they want to go away. They're just flocking to get the vaccination because they've been told that that's what they're supposed to do. The social guilt that comes with not having it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the last thing in the world I would do. For years, I fly into Africa and they go, oh, you must have a yellow fever certificate, card. And I said, so how much does the card cost without the vaccination? It was always $100. So I said, fine, there's $100, give me the card. And they go, well, we need to take you into the doctor's surgery so it looks right on camera. I go, that's fine. And I'd sit back in there. There was one particular time where it was a very, very attractive female doctor in Accra in Ghana. And she gave me the certificate and she said, this is my phone number in case you want to take me out for dinner as well. I went, I'm here on business, love. I'm here on business. But they're all, Africa's geared up for that. They're very, money talks, bullshit walks. So if you got the money, you can get anything in Africa, anything. So, yeah.
So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I was reading your book. How is it that you got into moving money?
This is a question I get asked an awful lot. It started off when I was in the hotel business down here in southern Spain and the multi-ownership and timeshare business. People, when they came on holiday from the United Kingdom, which was mainly all of our business, I used to do deals with them to take their pounds off them for pesetas in those days. So I'd have my wages coming in from my business, which was good. But my beer money came in from changing money. So we had, this is almost ironic really, because there was a bank called Bank of Credit and Commerce in Gibraltar, BCCI International, Bank of Credit and Commerce International. Mr. Zach was the manager. And he used to do us special deals on the exchange rate. Turns out the bank was closed down years later for being a front for a drug organization. That's why we got really good rates. But to me, as a young lad growing up, I didn't give a shit. All I cared about was getting a decent rate, pounds for pesetas. And so the Brits would come over and I would be changing their pounds into pesetas and changing them back. And I made money both ways. So that was my spending money, if you like, discreetly. And then, so that was just ongoing behind the scenes business. And then I had a couple of lads, really. One was Moroccan, one was London, who came to me and said, Charlie, we got a load of cash here. We want to buy a house and the lawyers want the money in the bank. So I said, yeah, that's sweet. No problem. Give me the cash. No, in those days, well, these days still, I used to charge 10% for large amounts of cash. Then I'd take it down to Mr. Zach and he'd put it into Bank of Credit and Commerce and we'd do all the paperwork, all the copy of passport, proof of address. In those days, that's all you needed. Passport and proof of address for your KYC in those days, which was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. So give it to Mr. Zach, tell him where the money had to go to, tell him what property it was for. It would normally go into a lawyer's escrow account in Spain, but it was coming from a bank rather than cash. So I started doing that with BCCI many years ago. And then BCCI got closed down. So then I was dealing with another bank, which I can't name at the moment because they're still trading very, very well in Switzerland, that were also very, very friendly. And I got to know the top boys at that bank. So I said, fine, we can just run it up to Switzerland, put it in the bank, and they would do the transfers. And then I landed up living next door to one of the crown princes of the Middle East. He was my neighbor. and we were just talking about stuff and talking about jobs. And he said to me, I can help you with this over in Dubai. I said, okay, cool. And we were doing quite a bit of business by that stage, but for different people, moving money into. He said, yeah, we can put any amount into the bank without any questions. This 10 years ago, didn't have the same questions. And of course, you go out for lunch with these people, you become friends with these people. And I've always been, the minute we had to declare it at customs, I remember the first time I walked into customs in Malaga airport and said, oh, I've got a million euros here in cash that I'm taking over to Dubai. And they went, is it your money? I go, yeah, here's the proof. It's my money. This is where it's come from. This is where it's going to. Fine, fill out all the documentation. They count it on their machines to make sure there's no fake money in there. And then I walked through customs with it in my suitcase, and off I went. Just for the record, €1 million in 500 euro notes is 7 inches tall, so it's not a lot. So you put it in with your hand luggage. You could easily take 5 million in there, fully declare it, no problem at all. So then when you get over to Dubai, you walk into their customs office and go, here's my declaration from Spain. This is my money. I need to declare it now to bring it into Dubai. So you declare it there, and then you go straight down to the bank, who happens to be also another friend. And they say, fine, this is Charlie. He's a friend of mine. Here's his passport. Here's his declaration. Once they've got the declaration, they're happy because customs are happy. They're happy. They've got the paper trail. Spain's happy. Everyone's happy. They've got the proof of where it's come from, where it's going to. That's fine. Put it into the bank, and it's wired off where it has to go. Then you start doing that, and then over the years, we moved a lot around in Africa, and because we were very good at what we did, you get government officials sort of say, "Oh, we've actually got to move this from here to here." And in those days, right at the start, the first government move was between two countries in Africa, where they were funding to make sure that certain people, I guess is before Dominion came along, they were paying certain people to make sure that the right people got into power in that country. Mm-hmm. And it was namely to do with what religious team or tribe they were in, if you like. They wanted their own people in power. And then you gradually do a bit more, and then government officials talk to other, do you know what, we don't need to worry about doing it our way. Just use Charlie's outside the box. There's no issue with that. And I was always very discreet, and I always declared fully at customs because I always had proof of funds, source of funds, and history of funds. In the latter days, in the early days, it was just proof of funds, where it's come from, i.e. it's been withdrawn from this account, which has come nearly always from government. They'll say it was, and you and I both know that when the government provides you with a document from a bank saying it's come out of there, they've obviously pulled some strings to get it. Mm-hmm. This money's never seen the inside of a bank. They're all brand new notes. They're all packed in. It's interesting because at 100 million in $100 notes is 1 cubic meter, 1 metric ton. Somebody thought that through very carefully right at the start of that journey. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how it works out like that. Yeah. So yeah, fascinating how it grew and grew and grew. And for the last 10 years, I've probably been one of the largest movers. In the last 5 years, I was moving stuff around, which I had no idea. I was under an NDA. I had no idea why I was doing it. And it was only towards the end that I realized that I was involved with the QFS team, moving stuff around gold to be refined and to be chipped, etc. That became clearer later on that, okay. And when the other side started communicating, said, right, we want to move you from that side to this side, from the outside to the inside, then I started to know that exactly what I'd been doing. And it was interesting that two of them all on the inside already knew me, and I knew them for many years. And they knew what I was doing, but I didn't know that they were on the inside.
Hmm. So that's when you got introduced to the QFS and to the RV GCR concept?
having done what I'd done, suddenly I start talking to people who volunteer the information. They're friends of mine. And then I find out that they're actually involved on the inside of the QFS. And I'm like, wow, I didn't see that one coming. So now I had access to a lot more information. That's when I was put under an NDA. I also have another NDA with the people who, don't know how much I can say on that, who are involved in the storage facilities and where the new government will be run from.
Got it.
So that was what I was not allowed to talk about, because the facilities of where they're doing everything and what is going on, that's very, very top secret. And a lot of people have pushed me, and my face gives away more than my mouth, so I have to be a little bit careful. But every now and then they said, no, you're doing a good job, just keep your mouth shut on stuff like that. That's fine. It's just purely because we get watched. It's not from a public point of view, it's from the deep state's point of view, that they don't know how much we really know.
Right.
And everything's coming together. You know, when you get all the pieces that come together, you know, the fence around Washington, D.C., that's to keep people in. There's about 350 senators in there.
Oh.
There's also a military tribunal in there.
Yeah, I heard. I've seen some pictures and of the foot soldiers, if you will, who have gone in there and taken pictures and seen what's going on in there to the best of their ability.
The military tribunals, a lot of them, we all know about Gitmo, but they're also being done in Washington because there's so many people to be processed. Yeah, it does. And that's why the fence is around the outside and the boarding's all up, and so that they're being held there in custody and they're being processed in there. The military tribunal is there because I know somebody who's been a witness there.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a myth.
It's not just a myth. They've actually been in a trial, and I think, I can tell you, they had to identify, not from the living soul, but from photographs, Joe Biden.
Oh.
What he really looked like, not the mock-up one nowadays, but the real version of him.
Right.
She had to identify him and George Soros.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's going to be really interesting when the truth starts coming out on that.
Yep. So super, super, super exciting.
Wow. Well, I don't know. I tend to be focused more on the financial stuff that's happening.
Yes.
Because my sense is that if the money is flowing when all of this other stuff starts to come out, that'll be easier for people to grasp and to not go into so much panic if they're feeling okay financially.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm hoping that the money that the prosperity systems start to flow before the information does.
Yeah, no, it's starting. It's starting, and between you and I, that phone call that came in halfway through here, he's just submitted in the last half an hour the final document that we needed to start the flow. So
excellent.
Yeah, now we have everything. Fingers crossed. Let's put it that way. And as I said over the weekend, Mayday, Mayday.
Right. Well, that was yesterday.
Well, it was Saturday, Sunday, and Monday was Mayday, because it's a Mayday bank holiday in lots of countries today. The 1st of May was actually on Saturday, and sort of Mayday Sunday. So yeah, there's a lot going on right now that we have our finger on the pulse. We're on top of everything, and myself and the compliance officer are holding the reins right now. because one of the top members obviously lost her father. So but everything's under control, and we're in a good place.
Yeah, that's what Source, my spirit guides, have been telling me.
Yeah,
it's all good.
It is.
Yeah.
So my book was written far quicker than your book because I didn't write it. I had a ghostwriter.
Well, I kind of sensed that, but you told your stories. Someone else took your stories and put them into a book.
Yeah, we did about 50 or 60 hours of Zoom conversation, sort of 2 hours at a time.
Okay.
And the way that it was interesting in the structure. The person who is the publisher, Mark Atwood, he said to me, "I want you to do 22 to 25 sections, and then 20 to 25 subsections. So you start off with and then just put titles up, and then you talk about each one of those sections for 5 minutes." But it didn't quite work out like that. There was some that you could talk on for half an hour, and some you talk on for 2 minutes. But it was just breaking down each section. But already since it's finished, there's so much that I've missed out that I could have put in there. They want me to do the next book. They want me to do is sort of 25 short stories. Some of the funny things that have happened in my life, because they're the things that people think are funny, and they were funny. Where you get yourself into trouble and get yourself out of trouble or whatever. I've had a life full of those.
Yeah, I noticed reading some of your stories. So there were two things that really struck me. One thing that really struck me is how much you love your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that was obvious even when you were a young dad.
Yeah.
How much you really love your children.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that really stood out for me is your ability to bounce back, because life has thrown you some really tough curveballs.
It has, but and definitely at certain stages in my life, I was close to breaking. And there's many people who will know what I mean when you feel you've hit the rock bottom, and then you realize there's a basement underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a pretty dark time, but when you've gone into that basement, then you can help other people come out of it. You know, when you think you've hit rock bottom and then there's more to go, you just like, really. No, I am a fighter, definitely. And I've enjoyed the journey, and I'm enjoying this journey immensely.
And it's going to we're going to be well rewarded for the difficult choice that the first half, right? That was so difficult, that we kind of I don't know, spirit put us through so that we could be of greater service to humanity later.
Yeah.
And there's your important call again.
It is. He's desperate. He wants to start paying people.
Fantastic. Sign me up.
Exactly. That's nice that he's calling twice in the space of 20 minutes. That means they're ready to push on and get people paid, which is good news.
That is fantastic. So yeah, it's interesting. I had clear back in January, I had tuned in, and Spirit kept showing me that something was going to happen in April financially. I kept seeing the end of April. So about 2 weeks ago, I said, okay, can you give me a date? Because we're nearing the end of April. And the date that came in was April 23rd. And I never get specific dates. And so April 23rd came and went, and I was kind of upset that April 23rd came and went. But apparently something did happen on April 23rd.
Yes, a lot happened on April 23rd. On April 23rd was when the megafiles were paid out. And from April the 23rd until now, there's been 2,000 arrests of bankers who tried to steal the money. The first 17 megafiles, of which this gentleman was one, They were paid out. Yeah,
I had heard that there were a bunch of arrests of,
yeah,
and that's kind of what I've been sensing. What Spirit was saying is that as the money starts filtering down, that it's flushing out more people.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. It'll flush out a lot of people, and those of us that are working very closely with this, they've told me that I'm going to need round-the-clock protection purely because there'll be so much demand for people who need help financially. But there's people that I'll depend on, like yourself, that I'll say, fine, you can, because you'll enjoy finding good people that need help. There's people like you that were put on this earth for exactly that. There's people that I trust. Michael Tellinger's another one that I trust implicitly, that you can say, fine. Tara Dean, who runs my diary, is another one. She's got her eyes on good projects and good people. There's many, many good people out there. Drew, who does all my editing, she looks after the homeless and feeds them, the street angels. There's so many people that I've got here that I can say, fine, Claire, that I can just say, fine, you can help me with this. I'll give you whatever money you need, but go out and use it wisely and use it, pray before each time you give away that it has gone to the right cause and it doesn't destroy somebody's life, but improve somebody's life. As long as it's going to improve somebody's life and not destroy lives. And I think that's where you and I will have a good connection, because we know from hard experience what destroys lives. We know what improves lives, and we've learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see it as an incredible, as I've been saying for years, that money in the hands of love can change the world.
Yeah.
And we use it to lift people up. When you lift up people, then everything becomes possible.
Of course it does. Of course it does. No, we're learning an awful lot on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
The world is changing, and for those people that are still stuck in the third dimension, it's going to be a bit of a shock for you. But I've stepped back from saying to you, you have to see this and you have to understand this. They don't, and we're just going to have to leave them and let them catch up in their own time. And you've done an awful lot of good work, an awful lot. I've shared a lot of your stuff with other people too, and it has a huge impact. And we're all trying to do the best we can for all of the right reasons.
Yeah,
but we're nearly there. We might even be there, but I'll speak to him in a minute.
Gonna make that phone call back.
Oh, for sure.
So Charlie, I have the name of my show is Fearless and Free TV.
Yes.
So I want to ask you before we close out, what does Fearless and Free mean to you?
Well, I mean, it probably means that you're my sister. You and I both know that we're not scared of anything now, because we've understood what fearless, what scared us. Nothing scares me now. Even what I get a little bit scared when my wife goes off, because she's Turkish, so she's 95% perfect, 5% terrorist. I get that. That's the only time I get a little bit scared. But no, I'm not really scared. And free means that I've connected with God. And I leave my life in his hands, and he guides me. And that's a lovely sense of freedom, because the freedom is that I'll go where he directs me. And I know that he won't lead me into trouble. But the most important thing about fearless and free is that your moral compass is accurate. So you understand that you're actually dealing with God and not something that looks like God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And too many people can't tell the difference.
And that's not their fault necessarily, because of the fact that Satan makes things look beautiful. And Lucifer they make it, otherwise that nobody would ever be attracted to them. But if you've gone inside here, and I've said it many times, if you believe in God, ask God. If you believe in Allah, Ask Allah. Allah is a translation of the word God in Arabic. So just so you know.
Right.
And
Same thing.
it's exactly the same thing. And if you don't believe in either of those, ask your mum or your grandma. Ask somebody from the earth, older people who are detached from all this modern technology and information and what have you. Ask older people who know what they're talking about to teach you what's right and what's wrong. And then you'll get clarity.
Yeah. It's here.
It is. It's right in there.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, you and I were educated to look at God up in the sky. Well, he's not. He's there.
Right.
When you find him, he's right there.
Right.
Yeah.
The separation is an illusion.
100%. 100%. 100%. And life has been a horror movie up until now. Now we're coming into the pantomime.
Yeah. Super, super exciting. Well, hopefully the next time we talk.
Yeah.
The next time we talk, we'll be in a completely different place.
I know 100% we'll be in a completely different place. It's just a question of how much has been opened up to the public. We're very, 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 very close. We might be there. I don't know. I'll phone him in a minute and see if we're there.
Well, I think it's my understanding is that it's going to be, well, what I was being shown by Spirit about a week ago was that it was going to be by invitation only at first.
Yep.
And then it would start to go out to the people who are in the inner circle and then eventually out into the public. But I don't think that the general population will even know
they won't.
That anything has happened.
They won't. They won't know when it happens. They won't know. You're absolutely bang on right. That's exactly how it will be. Those on the inner side will know immediately. And I know exactly why they'll know. And that will become clear very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will filter out. You're absolutely right. And then the penny will gradually start to drop. This process may well start before the declaration in Arizona.
Oh, is that for the voting?
That will start the collapse of the House of Cards, because the fraud is so great there. I can tell you there is a mountain of evidence.
Wow.
You don't need to be clever to work that out from the simple fact that they had more votes than there was people in the state.
Yeah, that's a problem. They didn't think that through very well, did they?
No, and if you've got to send 1,000 lawyers, which is what's happened, there's been over 1,000 lawyers gone there tried to stop it. You've been up to no good, haven't you?
Yeah, and it starts to become obvious.
Yeah. To anyone who knows, they know it's obvious.
Yeah, and I think what I was being shown from Spirit a couple of years ago is that there would come a point when the media will have no choice but to tell the truth.
Yeah, very much so. We're very close to that.
Good.
Lovely to see you, Victoria. Always an absolute pleasure.
Oh, likewise. And it's so funny. It's 2:00 in the morning here, and I am wide awake.
Oh, bless you. So kind of you to stay up so late.
No, you know what? It's my pleasure.
My wife would stay up until 2. I was up at 4 this morning because I had the chat with the girls that have been traffic, so I was up super early. But I'm better in the morning. My wife's better at night. But
yeah,
thank you so
I'm
much.
normally a morning person, but for some reason I'm not tired tonight.
You're an absolute angel.
I'll go to bed now and I'll still be up at 6.
Oh,
that's
bless
how crazy I am.
Good girl. Well, I'm sending you much love.
Likewise.
And we'll catch up again soon.
Okay.